All right, can you hear me? So this is my instructor voice. I'm gonna have to back off the mic because I'm used to projecting all the way to the back without one. It's my pleasure today to introduce Dr. Karla Fisher. She's another candidate for the presidency of Chattanooga State. And let me tell you a little bit about her. She's been a interim community college president. She's been in the system. She's worked in industry. She has a doctorate in, and I have to look it up so that I get it right, Education Administration Community College Leadership Program, the University of Texas at Austin. She is currently the Vice President of Academics at Butler Community College, and that's El Dorado, Kansas. She's got that interesting mix and very similar background where worked in industry, fell in love with community colleges, happy to be there. Lots of great things. Her resume is on the website, so you can go and look at it. I'm not gonna steal all her thunder. Just to reiterate a little bit about what was said, if you speak into the mic, give your name. Are you a faculty member, student, community constituent, so that they know who you are? And don't do like I did, because I didn't do that, so let me start over. I'm Dr. Evelyn Mobley. I'm out of the Math and Science Division. I'm in the Life Sciences Department, and I teach anatomy and physiology. I am one of those. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Dr. Fisher, if you've got any opening comments, and then they'll have questions going around.
Well, good afternoon. Is my mic on? Yes, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for turning out. It's nice to see so many people. Had a great day being on your campus, meeting faculty and staff, touring, spending lunch with Faculty Senate and our ops staff and some other folks. So thank you for the opportunity to come and talk to you about perhaps being president here at Chattanooga State. For those of you that haven't had a chance to look at my resume or do the Google search that we all do when we're hiring, let me just say, I've been saying it all day, but Butler Community College is very much like Chattanooga State. If you picked up Butler and put it in Tennessee, here we would be. We're about the same size. We've about 9,200 students. We have both career and technical education, certificates, AASs, and of course all transfer degrees. We do adult basic education all the way down to numbers and letters, and we go all the way up to our high-end engineering, manufacturing, 2+2s with some of our university partners. So we have that comprehensive view. And that's what I see when I come to Chat State, is a real comprehensive community college that's meeting the needs of industry and of students in your community. So that's very exciting to me. She mentioned that I am serving as Vice President of Academics right now. And I came to this from a very different path. I started out in business and industry, primarily in financial services and technology. And I spent about 15 years doing marketing, communications, product development. And I took a job at Salt Lake Community College more years ago than I want to mention. And I took it not because it was education. I really had never thought about higher education as an industry necessarily that I'd want to be in. But it wasn't 6 months of being at that college that I wasn't in love with community colleges. And so I spent about 5.5 years there, and then I went to the University of Texas because I figured if I want to spend the rest of my career in community colleges, and I most certainly do, I needed to get a lot smarter about what this industry is all about. And don't kid yourselves, this is an industry. We have a very key niche in our market, particularly for our economy. If we are not the economic drivers, our economy just won't work. And I often say we are doing some of the most important work in the US today because we're the ones who are getting people from K-12 into the workforce and keeping that cycle running. So with that, I guess I would tell you only that I have, my husband will be here with us for the reception. He's a Navy veteran and a microbiologist, and he couldn't be more excited about Chattanooga either because you have so many wonderful places that a microbiologist could be. So we would love to join you here. And with that, I think I'll just open it up to questions.
Raise your hand. Michelle? I have to put my sunglasses on because I've got my glasses and I can't. I made a note, but I can't. Sorry, I can't see. I'm getting older. Okay. As a system, Yep. As a system and as an institution, we're committed to the completion agenda. That being said, we have a lot of work to do around the student support services. As I was reading your vita, I saw that you had secured a TRIO grant, which by design focuses on first generation and low income students. Beyond that, will you share your philosophy on student support services and the relationship between faculty, staff, and the student? And then will you share an example of an initiative that has had significant impact on your campus?
Sure. So taking TRIO as the leaping off point, TRIO is a wonderful federal program. The challenge was that it allows us to serve 140 out of 9,200 students. All right, it is low income. It is minority at our institution. It's also those that are served by disability services. And so it's been a very productive grant for those particular students. What we're learning, though, is we need to take the best parts of that TRIO model and infuse that into our entire student success model. We had a Title III grant previous to TRIO that took us down a path of retention with a office of retention, a retention specialist, a retention system that faculty could report students that needed attention. And what we found is that didn't fit the rhythm of our college, the life of our college particularly well. It gave us a little uptick in retention, but not the kind of numbers that we were really looking for. And so what we've done is reorganize that into a new division, take the retention specialist who has a lot of good knowledge and turn her into a student support specialist, take it out of a retention office, and really begun a campaign across our campus that retention is everybody's job. It's not one person's job, and unfortunately when you give somebody a title, it seems like that's their position. So we've done that, and this fall we're building out an entire new structure within physically structure and within our organizational structure to create a student success center that has a component for faculty development, it has a component for student development, and brings the directors of those areas together in one physical space. We have an AVID grant that we just got last year. We're the first in our state to be an AVID college. If you're familiar with the AVID, anybody familiar with the AVID? Yay, one. Were you an AVID student? Mm-hmm. It's a pretty tremendous model, isn't it? Yeah. It's a success model that started in K-12, primarily in high schools, and has been pushed down further, and now they're wanting to go into college. The AVID model really focuses on very specific types of teaching skills. So you're teaching not only the students how to be students, you're teaching teachers how to integrate their teaching with the kind of teaching that the student can take. So it's writing skills, it's inquiry skills, all of those things. So in our new Student Success Center, that's what we'll be teaching. We took our faculty development position that was an administrative position when I got to the college. That person retired, and we turned it into a faculty leadership position. And so that faculty leadership, or faculty leader, has an advisory council of 28 faculty members who work with him to drive this up, and they have embraced AVID tremendously. And so that's where we're headed. So can I tell you that we've made tremendous progress and changed our retention numbers? No, I can't. However, we do have, and I know you're walking toward this, co-requisite developmental education that has shown tremendous promise. And so building the student success initiatives around those kind of co-requisite, and then co-requisite for some of our gatekeeper courses as well, we think is going to move the needle there. I'll just give an example of our English. It's the Accelerated Learning Program out of Baltimore. It's not our model, but it's one that we adopted and adapted to Butler Community College, and we're seeing 33% increase in student success in those ALP courses compared to regular courses. And those of you in the research office know that in social science, if you can move the needle 5%, you throw a party. And so to throw it consistently up above 30% is making us feel like we're on the right track for sure. Did that answer your question? Thank you so much.
I'm taking you.
Yeah, how are you doing? I'm Al Douglas. I'm a student representative for the Student Government Association.
Wonderful. Hi.
We've met before. And I want to ask a question. With student initiatives being a strong asset of the Student Government Association, how are you with student initiatives such as a smoke-free campus or initiatives such as recycling?
You know, I think that we have to be very careful when we talk about implementing any kind of new initiative that it's not a top-down, right? I think if the president comes in and waves their magic wand and says, we shall recycle everything, we're going to build resentment. So what we have to do is start at the grassroots level and say, how do you feel about green initiatives? Students, how do you feel about this? What do you think will work? And we build up through the system so we come to a policy that we can all live with. Now, that's not to say I can't make a decision. I can. But those kinds of initiatives that require grassroots support need grassroots support from the day one. They can't be something that you just implement. I know that smoke-free campuses can be a touchstone or a hot button. We went that direction a couple of years ago. That was a committee that I was not on, and I was not crying about not being on because it was very controversial. We have done it, and I would say they did it the right way. They really did start at that grassroots level and work it up so that people got very comfortable with it. Now, did everyone agree with that? Of course not. They didn't, but that's where we ended up. So I guess my point in all of that is I don't believe in coming in and imposing. I believe in all of us working together. We have an awful lot of smart people on this campus that have lots of varied perspectives. And I think that there's a process you can put in place that doesn't have to be bureaucratic. It doesn't have to take forever, but it has to be inclusive and have everybody, including and especially students, have a voice. Very quiet.
Here's one. Sorry, Joe, I didn't mean to take the microphone.
Hi, Dr. Fisher. I'm Gladys Pineda-Lord. I am the Director of International Community Outreach. I'm very glad to have you here, and I have a question more related to internationalization of campus and initiatives that imply globalization and internationalization of the campus and how they are impacting like the pathways to prosperity, since I know that you have been big in business, industry, and health.
You know, I think especially when you look at Chattanooga as a city, it's changed tremendously since I was here as a child. I came here with my grandparents several times when I was 13, 14 years old. And I was amazed when I came to the city to see the changes. And one of those big changes is globalization. And maybe we can't call this a global city yet, but I would say give us 8 or 10 years and we're going to be a much more global city. So if we don't help students gain a global comfort level, understand different cultures, understand how to work with different folks, and you do that by internationalizing your curriculum, you do that by helping students travel when possible, certainly faculty travel when possible, getting out and bringing that world to Chattanooga so that the students get really comfortable in the world they're going to have to live in eventually. And so their pathway to prosperity has to be through understanding their global role. It can't be forever just staying in Chattanooga itself. I think that's tremendously important. Others earlier today heard me say, I am a firm believer that curriculum and modality belong with faculty. I don't believe that administrators, and particularly not the president, have any business in dabbling in that. At the same time, I think it's up to your president, it's up to your leaders to say, this is the reality our students are going to live in. How shall we respond to that? And encouraging, and helping faculty respond to that in a way that helps our students respond. Thanks. I almost wish I had it run up there.
I'm not sure I'm on. Okay. I'm Suzanne Elston, Director of Adult Basic Education at Chattanooga State. And this is sort of a follow-up to Gladys's and your last question as well. We provide, of course, adult basic education services, preparation for the high school equivalency exam, as well as ESOL courses and EL Civics related courses. Can you talk a little bit about your vision of how we bring in that internationalization from the lower end and bring it on up, and as well as how do you see the vision, what is your vision of adult basic education in the mission of the college?
Adult basic education, where I come from right now in Kansas, community colleges are the only providers in most of the counties. Now, in our most urban counties, in Sedgwick up and then up Kansas City, there are other providers, United Way and some others. But certainly out where we are, we're the only game in town. And I see the effects that we have on those students' lives every single day. And in a college of 9,200 students, we may only have 75 or 100 adult basic ed students at any one given semester, And of course, it's open entry, open exit, so we can kind of see. But that changes their lives, and we do the best that we possibly can to get them immediately into a college level course. Typically, it's a student success course, so they get college credit while they're doing this stuff. So, you know, I think building that channel and pulling it along is very important. But I think you globalize that the same way you do any other curriculum. You know, it's through bringing in the world to Chattanooga and not setting aside adult ed students as if they're this strange population. And as a matter of fact, this last year, it took some effort, but really reorganized some physical structures to bring all of our adult ed smack dab in the middle of our campus. They're beneath the library, and our library is an upper story library, and so they have the space below that. Getting them upstairs and downstairs to that library and being college students is probably the most important thing that I can think of that we can do for those students to continue to pull them along. And globalization is a piece of that curriculum.
We know you can carry, but sometimes too much. Not on the video. There you go.
I want to apologize for being. Is that on? Yes. Oh, okay. I want to apologize for being late, but you may have answered this question already. What is your experience with performance-based funding and your feeling on that? You know what we're going through here in the state of Tennessee, and we want to hear your, or at least I do, I want to hear your opinion on and background and maybe experience you had with performance-based funding.
Any new money, we have performance agreements. They're statutorily directed, and so we build those with our regents. But unlike a lot of states, and I believe Tennessee, there isn't a key set of metrics that we use. There are categories, and then we have to negotiate our own metrics around that. And then based on how you do on your performance agreement each year, that impacts your funding. You get 100%, 80%, 60% in that way. One of the things that's really helped us do on our campus is the minute that we started thinking of it not as a checkbox for our regents, but as a plan for activity, that really drove our behavior. It really helped us focus, and that's one thing that I see with Chat State. We need to really focus on those things that are going to drive your metrics. Now, one of the pushback that I get from faculty often is all you care about is those statistics. It's all you care about is those numbers. And my answer to that is I have to, because I need the money to keep the lights on and your classroom running and you paid. I have to care about the numbers. But the numbers, each and every one of them represent a student. And so if we are content to have a transfer rate of 11%, that says something about our commitment to students, right? If we're content to have a graduation rate of 8%, that says something about our commitment to students. And I'm not here to criticize that. I mean, every institution I've ever been at struggles with some of those numbers. But what I will say is Butler is very ambitious. We try a lot of stuff. And Chat State's clearly very ambitious. You're trying a lot of stuff, and it's all in the right vein. But it feels to me like it needs to be focused down so we can really drive toward those performance measures so that we can get the money that we need to do the work that we need to do. Thanks.
We're not getting you on the web. It's coming in. It's not coming on the internet.
Sorry. It's okay.
Welcome back, Dr. Fisher. My question, I'm Bill Norman, and I'm in tech support for the library. So my question is, what is your vision of the library's role in how it relates to overall student success and retention?
Well, the role of libraries is changing and has been changing over time, particularly with the onslaught of the web and the way that the online world has changed our world. And I really see libraries as a gathering place, as a learning space, as a place that students can access trained librarians who understand how to connect them to knowledge. Now, I say that intentionally, not information, not data, not reports, knowledge. The libraries at Butler Community College report up through my office. The Director of Libraries reports directly to me. I think they're a key component of our student success initiatives. And her vision and my vision are that, and much like the library that I saw here today, that there are learning spaces where students can gather and work collaboratively, because we need to teach them how to do that. And then there are quiet spaces where they can go and they can study if that's what they need to do. And certainly we still have the stacks. There will probably always be stacks in libraries, but more importantly, we have all kinds of databases, and we help students understand what of that is legitimate and useful, and what of that is sort of the noise in our outside world. And that's the role of a librarian as far as I'm concerned. And that librarian walks alongside the faculty members. We do a tremendous amount of library training in our Comp 1 classes. All of them go to the library, are trained by librarians, and come back. So there's a constant dynamic back and forth between the librarian and the comp teachers. So there's some team teaching going on, and that's happening in several of our different disciplines. But I do see it as a linchpin, one of the most important places that we have on campus.
Yes, I'm Sharon Moreland with the Small Business Development Center. And have you worked with SBDCs in the past, and how do you see them fitting into a community college environment?
Sure. We have an SBDC on campus at Butler, and we had one, a very strong one, at Salt Lake Community College when I worked there. The connection that we can make with our small businesses is through our corporate training. So very often SBDC works with particularly entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs coming in, trying to figure out their business plans and helping them connect themselves and their potential employees to the kind of corporate training that we do. We have very robust corporate training, everything from sort of your computer skills to anything else you can think of. That's what we do, and that's the SBDC ties into all of that. So we kind of link people back and forth. If someone comes to us and says, I need training on how to write a business plan, you know, we don't have a class on how to write a business plan because we have an SBDC that will help them get that done. And then we invite them back to get the additional skills that they need to make their businesses successful.
Oh, you don't have, oh, that's right, I'm sorry. Okay, it took me a minute.
Hi, my name is Nisha Evans, and I'm a counselor for a program here at Chat State for at-risk students. But my question is, what do you see the role of student life, extracurricular activities for students here at Chat State?
When we talk about student success, we have to talk about retention. And if you talk about retention, you have to talk about engagement. And the things that students can do through student life, the things they can do through athletics programs for that matter. I know there's some trepidation that the new president might not support athletic programs. Those are retention tools in my mind. We should be using those with a very intentional focus on keeping students on campus, keeping them interrelating with other students, with us, using it in those ways. So it's fine to have a fun party once in a while as part of student life, but it needs to be part of a very strategic, intentional effort focused on retention.
Talitha McJunkin, Director of Assessment and Planning. We're heading into our new 10-year strategic planning cycle, and everything from the strategic plan structure to the implementation to the reporting is all brand new. So I have two-part question, and one is, what do you think goes into a good, strong, solid strategic plan? And then what do you see your role as a president in making sure that it gets implemented and in a timely fashion, et cetera? So.
Well, interestingly enough, I just completed, well, I should say I led the strategic planning process at Butler. And we started out thinking that was going to be the 2014-2016 strategic plan. We did it in 2013, so we're ready to launch in 14. And what we learned as we began to work through this is it's kind of a timeless plan. Because when we built it, we didn't ask ourselves the question, what do you want to do? We asked ourselves the question, what do you want to be? And so our strategic plan looks like a framework for what a perfect community college should be, or at least Butler in its ideal state. So we focus on four main priorities: student success, employee success, contributing to our communities, and institutional effectiveness. And so once we had this plan with very aspirational goal statements under each one, these are the things that we think should happen if Butler were to be ideal. We then took that out to all of the different units in the college, and rather than the leadership saying, okay, now for student success, you must, and you must, we had a planning process with them that said, how are you going to respond to this? How are you going to be responsible for helping us implement this? And it's been tremendous, the energy that's been generated by having people have that voice. And I should say, in the framework, we did a college-wide meeting, so we did everybody in the college, from our groundskeepers to our president, did a SWOT analysis of our college. We really got deep into what are our strengths and weaknesses and where do we need to go. And we took all that data and we then held a series of day-long retreats. So all of Exec Council met each day, one on each priority, and we brought in key stakeholders in the college around that. So of course you can't talk student success without having folks from student services and the academic side. They have to be in the room to have that conversation. And so we did that for each of the priorities. So by the time we came out with that strategic framework, and that's really what we call it, more than just a plan, it's a framework, everyone that took a look at it said, well, yeah, of course. Of course that's what we should be working on. There was no surprise there because they'd all had their fingerprints all over it. And so that made it very easy to take it to the units and ask them to respond because they knew where it came from, they understood the rationale, and now we have an implementation plan. So we have a strategic framework that's an implementation plan that's where, what is it that we're gonna do, what are our metrics, and from all of those metrics we roll up to KPIs. A KPI of retention can't really be tracked back to one given event or one given project. You're gonna be working on several different things and you can't make them sort of discreetly say that's what drove that. Again, social science research, that's what happens. It's hard to prove causation. But those KPIs keep us on track, and so then how do you hold people accountable to that? We have reporting, monthly reporting out from each of the initiatives. They come to our board book, so we publish a board book once a month that goes to our elected board, and so they see where we are on each of those as well as where we are on our KPIs, and we have conversations about that. So, thanks.
Hello, I'm Darren Hosseford. I'm the Dean of Humanities and Fine Arts. Right. I have two questions for you. The first question, I will start with a statement. The state of Tennessee has an illiteracy problem as a state. So our English faculty, and myself included, are very concerned about the co-requisite model that is starting this fall. And I know you've been through this model at your institution. We are very familiar with the Baltimore model. As a state, from what we understand, we are using some of that, but also deviating in a way that all students who are below 18 in writing will go directly into the co-requisite Comp 1 and Learning Support Writing course. So faculty are very concerned about having a student of an ACT of 10 in a Comp 1 class. So I would love to know more about your experience at Butler and your thoughts on the co-requisite model, particularly when it comes to reading and writing. And then my second question is, how do you see the role of the humanities and the visual and performing arts in education?
So the co-requisite model, as I said, we're having tremendous success with it, but we have a floor. It's one thing to have a cutoff score for where you end up, but you also need to understand where the bottom skill level is. And so by implementing a floor, and I don't know if the Regents, if that's on deck or you're allowed to do that, that allows us then to take those students into a lower level of dev ed that we also do 2 levels at a time, or into adult ed if that's where they need to be. So that would be my recommendation. If that's not something that we're allowed to do, I think we need to get very serious about how we give those students at what we would probably put as our floor, below that some very significant support. Because you're correct. I mean, if they simply don't have the base level skills, it's going to be very difficult to get them to move up. So often when we put students into dev ed, though, we put them through a high stakes test. Maybe they don't do so well, but if they have some grit and they have some desire, they get halfway through a class, they can do really, really well, especially in a co-requisite with the right kinds of teachers. At the same time, if they don't, then we have some struggles. And with performance funding coming along, I think that's of great concern, and I think that's something we'd want to really work through. Now, in terms of fine arts and humanities, I was sharing earlier that Butler is an NJCAA powerhouse in sports. We have a national football team, we have baseball, softball, women's basketball, women's and men's basketball, soccer, volleyball. I'm forgetting somebody along the line, and somebody at my college is going to see this video and is going to get on to me about that. But we have a tremendous number of sports, and that's wonderful. Those are wonderful retention and frankly, diversity kinds of programs for us. We bring in a tremendous number of out-of-state students that really adds some color and some spice to a campus that wouldn't have that otherwise. So that's great. But I bring that up for fine arts because we now have the same number of scholarships in fine arts and mass communication that we have in all of those sports programs. I'm tremendously committed to the arts. I think that we do ourselves a big disservice when we think that those don't help people learn. Not only is it a creativity builder, I think that we can really help people with their interpersonal skills, with their critical thinking skills. The arts can be wonderful for all of those things. And they're also, just like student life, just like sports, a retention mechanism, particularly when we can scholarship some students into them. So very committed to the arts.
Hello, my name is Keisha Caldwell, and I'm the director of the Welcome Center Recruiting. And I have a question. Hopefully you are familiar with the Tennessee Promise, and if you are, how do you think we can have an impact from the Tennessee Promise program?
So the we there, is that your division or is that the college? I'm sorry, are you talking about your office in recruiting, or are you talking about the college?
Either.
Either, anybody.
Yeah.
You know, coming from a state that doesn't have the funding or really the will to do something like Tennessee Promise, I stand in awe. You know, I know that it's a little daunting to think of what that could do to your capacity, but it really does open doors for students, or can open doors for students that wouldn't be here. At the same time, just as we're talking about our co-requisites and the challenges that happen with students that fall below, you know, this kind of program can bring in a population of students that are going to need tremendous support. And so I think one of the first things that we need to do, should I join you here, is look very deeply into the student support systems and see where we're being really successful based on data and where we're not. You know, and shift resources as necessary. And when I say resources, I'm not saying take your budget away from you and give it to you. I'm talking about us coming together to say, what's the best model? And we have all these tremendous people. What's the best form of that work for them to do? So I think the promise is amazing, but I also think it offers some real challenges that are going to have to be one of our first priorities to get busy figuring out how to deal with those students, because the last thing we want to do is bring them in the door with truly a promise of this, you know, funded education, and then let them slip out the back door because they can't be successful. I often say Butler is a high expectation, high support college. That's the goal for us to be. One of the things that we don't want to do is look at students that come in on the Promise or any other way, our at-risk students, and say, oh, poor baby, you can't really do this work, so we'll make it easier for you, and we'll just help you get through. Because as Tinto says, right, students rise exactly to the expectation that you set. Nobody rises to low expectations, right? We want high expectations for our students, but that requires at the same time that we have a high level of support, really guaranteeing that those students get what they need. And not every student needs exactly the same support. Some need academic support, some need emotional support, frankly. It can be a really daunting and scary thing to come to a place like this. And this is a big, beautiful campus, but if this isn't a place that you ever aspired to in your life and you're suddenly here, what mechanisms, what strategies will we have in place to help them feel comfortable and get to where they need to go?
Hey, John Howarth. I'm the interim dean of social behavioral sciences. A lot of what happens at this college, it appears, we get a lot of times we get something we have to do. We have to change course all of a sudden. And the question I have for you is that when you're in your previous experiences, I'm sure you've obviously faced something like this. How would you describe your leadership and management style dealing with the people, especially who report directly to you?
You know, I think the things that you have to do can be prescriptive from the state, and I think maybe that's what you were thinking. Sometimes it's just a mandate. Here we go. got to change it. Perfect example in Kansas right now. They've decided that several of our courses we have a tiered funding system, so certain courses are paid at a lot higher rate, and some are even paid under SB 155 for high school students for free. And so we have enrolled all of these students for fall, and then got word that several of the courses that they thought they were going to get for free will not be for free. And they're in academy systems, they're in cohort programs, they're in things like that. And so, I think the best thing you can do is, in that situation, dire as it may feel, is bring people together, help them understand where it's coming from, what the parameters are, what of all of that feels like extraneous noise, because sometimes it's our reaction to it that makes it more difficult than it is to just get down to brass tacks on how to implement. So that's only when you're dealing with something that's come from outside, and especially when it's on a very short timeline that maybe puts you in a bit of a bind. I think sometimes there are things we have to do that come to us of our own volition. They come to us because we look at student success data, because they come to us because we look at program data, enrollment data, you name it, and suddenly it's like, wow, that's something we really have to do. And I would say my leadership style around that is much the same. I really believe in convening the people who are doing the work. I just believe that everybody in this room is a lot smarter than one person standing at the front of the room. And for me to try to tell you, like that, this is how you're going to solve that problem, might take us on the right path. I have pretty good instincts about these things, but it's not a guarantee. And I think it's much better for us to take a little bit of time to come together. I don't want a hugely bureaucratic system, but I do think it's important to bring together the people who are going to be affected, to have a voice in this, and more importantly, to have a transparent look at all of the situation around it. And for me, that means transparency around budget. It means transparency around hiring practices. It means transparency around everything that goes on in our very public institution. And so I think if you can bring people together, provide them with the data that they need to make a rational decision, I think that we can come to decisions together. That doesn't mean the buck doesn't stop here, because of course it does. At some point, your deans, your vice presidents, your president are going to have to make a decision, but I'm committed to bringing people together so that everybody feels like they had some say in that decision. Thanks.
Hi there.
Hi there.
I'm Chase Burnett. I'm one of the tour guides here at Chat State, and as of Saturday, I'm going to be a graduate.
Yeah.
And my question is very simple. What do you like to do for fun? Just in your spare time, or even around the college campus, what do you like to do?
Sure. Well, I mentioned that we have lots of sports and lots of arts, so I like to attend student activities. I really enjoy getting out to see our graduate student advisors. I meet with them at least once a semester and typically bring them something silly like breakfast casserole, because they really like that. So spending time with students is very fun for me. But I'm also a runner. I like to run 2, 3, 4 days a week, as much as I can fit in there. Just a little work-life balance. But I have to say, it's really tough when I'll say this. The vice president of student services that I work with says he's never worked a day in his life because he loves his job, right? It's just fun. Well, I won't say that. I will say I work. It is effort. But I love the work so much that really being on campus is fun for me. Interacting with my faculty is a lot of fun for me. But then also being out in the community. We're at Butler, and certainly me personally, we're very committed to being involved in community things. I'm the board chair for the Kansas Humane Society right now, and like to volunteer with them. That makes me very happy. But I sit on the chamber boards and things like that as well. So getting those connections made is fun for me.
So I've got a question as well. Evelyn Mobley, Life Sciences and Math and Science Division. It has to do with faculty communication. One of the things that you've said repeatedly is I need to bring the people together. So I'm going to not necessarily go after that, but just kind of say, I teach 6 classes, day and night. It's very hard to get all of the people together. So I guess I'd like to hear a little bit more about how you are going to plan to communicate. Because I have day and night classes.
I completely understand. We have the same situation at our college, of course. We have instituted, and it's a tough thing to do to carve out the time, but we have 2 institutional development days, one in the fall and one in the spring, that our entire college comes together. And we plan those very strategically to deal with some of the issues that we know we need to deal with, but also give them time to meet in department and division meetings, because one of the things we hear from faculty a lot is that they don't have time during the semester due to their teaching schedules to work with their colleagues. And so that's one way that we do that. Another is we have quite a strong, and I've worked on strengthening our, what I would call a council system. So we have exec council that has a very clear role, and then we have dean's council and an inclusion council really working on diversity and globalization and those sorts of issues. We have our faculty association, which is also a council, but because of the way Kansas is structured, it's called an association. And then we have an ops staff association. And each of those organizations has a very specific kind of role within our organization. And so part of what the expectation is that they work with their constituencies to get that feedback, okay? And we also do a tremendous amount of surveying, so people have a chance to just weigh in on things that we think are important. I will say too, in the council structure, I don't believe that it's exec council, or I think you call it the cabinet here. That role is strategic and visionary and helpful and resource providing. It is not to come in and say, it's Tuesday, let's go this direction. No, it's Thursday, let's go that direction, right? It's a way to keep us on track with our strategic plan. It's a way to keep us working as a group. But when we have an idea come up, whether that comes up from somebody out in the college or comes up from us, it goes into our council system. So if it's a dean's kind of issue, it goes to the deans, and the deans work on it and make a proposal. Or perhaps it's something completely out of the realm of those 4 councils, then we create a task force for that, cross-functional, and it is the expectation that they would work with their colleagues to get some consensus around what it is that we need to do. Because we know we can't pull you out of the classroom, we wouldn't want to. That's where you're doing the best work. In terms of just straight communication, because I think that was your other concern, I think it's really important to do open forums, much like this one, topical, depending on what's going on in the college, and to follow up with those forums with clear communication back out. I typically do it by email, but back out to the rest of the college, because not everybody can be in the room every single time. And then just to have a really open door. I expect people to send me responses to those, and I get them. I get questions, I get concerns, I get thoughts, and that's helpful, actually, to me. So that's the kind of communication I would expect us to have, just very open.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
I'm Barry Jennison, Dean of the Business and Information Technologies Division, and I was just curious if you could give us a little idea about what your focus and goals have been for the academic divisions at the schools you've been at.
Okay. The focus at Butler when I came in, the fact that we're on video makes it a little bit more challenging. We had some broken relationships at the college when I came in. We had divisions that were working in very siloed ways, and I wasn't particularly pleased with the outcomes for that. We had a workload across our academic divisions that was really unsustainable. 2 of our deans had tremendous numbers of faculty and a very different workload than our 2 CTE divisions. Seemed stable, but the other 2 really were not. So brought people together to do, once again, you're going to hear me say it, open forums, big believer in getting people in the room, to talk to the faculty in those divisions about how we could create a structure that would really support them. And so I guess I would say, quite simply, it's been to get the structures in place at the college that allow people to do the best work that they can. I think in most situations, if there's a problem within the system, it's not an individual. Sure, there can be personality conflicts every now and then, but it's not that individual. It's a process or a system, an organizational chart that rewards the wrong kind of behavior, that drives the wrong kind of behavior, that puts people in conflict with one another. And so to me, over the time that I've been at Butler, first it was in the academics division, getting that very stable. And then about 2.5 years in, when I took over as interim, you may have heard me mention just a very tough time for our college. We needed to cut a significant amount of our budget, and 72% of our budget is personnel. So you can imagine if you're cutting $1 million out of a $47 million budget, what that means. So getting structures in place, but rather than just cutting across the board, because that's, I'm sorry, the easy answer. Okay, everybody give up 5%. That's not strategic. It doesn't help you meet your mission. It just hurts everybody. And so what we did is go to the grassroots and say, what's working, what isn't. look at your data in your units. Let's understand what's working. And then, of course, no unit is going to volunteer to be reorganized most of the time. Sometimes they will, but not very often. And so take that up to the next level and really begin to look at it across the college. What could we do that would make us more efficient and effective, more able to meet our strategic plan goals without taking away from what we give to students? And we reorganized 5 areas of the college. So my last 5 years has really been spent very much in organizations and organizational structure and helping us get to a budget that supports what we need to do. At the same time, doing strategic planning has been high on my list, trying to get that done. We had a TACTA grant, so really beginning to look for grants that help us meet our strategic goals and really have a lot of discipline about not chasing grants that aren't tied to exactly what we should be doing in our strategic plan. So our TACTA grant really helped us look at, redo a bunch of labs, which is wonderful for the technology, but really the important thing that we've been doing is restructuring curriculum, working with faculty to help them get our curriculum up to date, up to industry standards, and consolidated in a way that makes sense. So we're not running a bunch of tiny little boutique programs. We're bringing them together into tracks that then helps students. And IT is just one example. We have several others that we're working through the system right now. So it's been very curricular in nature because of the nature of the VPA job, but it's been very much about organizational structure and helping people get there.
Hi, Al Douglas again, student representative for SGA. You talked a lot about advancement via individual determination, which is AVID, and making sure that students advance via the individual determination. My question for you is, how would you use student government opinions as well as student leader opinions to implement changes onto the college campus to further advance individual determination?
You know, our student government is so strong at Butler. It's just an absolute delight to work with them. I meet regularly with the president, and he also reports to the board. Each of our councils, by the way, reports to the board every single month. So when we meet, we talk about how can student government become more of an academic focus, because in our past years it may have had more of just a student life focus. Not that those aren't wonderful activities, they are, but they really wanted to start helping students learn AVID skills even outside the classroom. So we've taken all of our tutors, and they're now AVID trained tutors, so they're Socratic tutors. And the SGA was really interested in learning some of those skills as well and beginning to push out some of the academic into what they do. It's a fine line that you walk with student government, because we want student government to be self-determining as well, right? So we want to invite the voice, we want to invite the leadership and the guidance from student government without imposing too much on them. And it's been wonderful to see them really blossom and think more globally about what it is that they're doing with the students and how they can influence what we do with the students. Thanks.
Hi, I am Dr. Anita Polkami. I'm a professor in the math department. And welcome, we're glad you're here.
Thank you.
But I want to know, why would you like to be president of Chattanooga State?
Not a question that has been asked the first time, right? And that's a question you should ask everybody that comes to talk to you, because this is a really remarkable place. I wasn't looking for a job when this one came up. I got a couple of calls and said, go look at Chat State. I think you'd really be interested. I think you have the skills that they need right now in their life cycle. And so I went, of course, to the website. I did a lot of calling around to see, and they were correct. Chat State is an amazing place. At the same time, I think that you have some challenges that I could help with. I think you have some cultural challenges. I think you have some communication challenges. I think you probably have some structural challenges. All of these are things that I have done and enjoy doing and can help people get through in a really compassionate way. At the same time, I think Chat State is poised to be an incredible leader on the national stage if that's what we want to be. It's well known already. It's absolutely well known. And I don't mean this to be critical, but when you look at what Chat State has in terms of the fantastic faculty, your staff, your budget for the size college you are, the facilities that you have, your community support, these are all incredible assets. And yet, when I measure those against some of your student outcomes, I'm kind of, I question how that's happened. I mentioned your graduation transfer rates, and certainly that's not the only way to measure success in a college. but it's one way. And what it tells me, as an outsider from several steps back, is that there's too much going on and not enough focus. And that's something through, did I hear a yes? I think I heard an amen. Yeah, I think that that's the case. And the problem is then people's energy gets dissipated, and you can't focus down on the few things that you really need to do to drive those specific numbers. And again, it's not just numbers. Those are individual students that we're talking about. So I think there are tremendous opportunities here to help the college grow and change in some ways that I think you're ready for, honestly. I think that could be really fun and really exciting. Back to what's fun. That would be really fun for me. I also work in a state system right now that's a regent system, and have chaired a couple of the councils at the state level and been able to do some statewide, system-wide work that I'm very proud of, frankly, and I think we did just tremendous work on behalf of students, and I like that. I like being in a really strong system where the colleges can come together, can work together, can convene faculty together, and so that's something that's very attractive to me in the Tennessee system. And finally, you know, somebody asked me earlier today, why do you want to leave Butler? And the fact of the matter is I don't want to leave Butler. Actually, it would be a very difficult step for me to take because I love my institution very much. But I really want to come to Chat State. I just think that this is a place that I could have a positive impact for you, and I could learn from you as well. So.
Remember, one question gets a free 2-week vacation.
I feel like we've had a very serious conversation about very serious things, right? So I don't want you to leave with this very serious. Oh, good. Here we go.
Whoa, Joe, I think I'm on. I'm Debbie Adams. I want to ask a question about workforce development. We've historically been very successful in our workforce development programs, have had very strong community relation partners. What is your view on the role of community college in the community, and any example of a partnership that you may have developed or worked on in the past?
So just so our nomenclature is the same, workforce for you is non-credit training?
Non-credit training? No, it could be credit training.
Okay, could be credit.
We develop a lot of our programs, both credit and non-credit, based on the community needs. We have great partnerships with many of our business and industry here.
Sure do.
So it could be credit or non-credit.
Okay.
But helping our community meet the workforce needs, whatever that may be.
Right. You know, I think too often, community college, I'm not saying that about Chat State necessarily, but too often, because all of us are university educated as educators, you know, we come to this place with this model in mind that that's the end goal for every student. And we know now that that's not the case. Workforce development is critical. As I said at sort of the top of the hour, I think we have to be the economic engine in our community. We have to be the one who takes students from wherever they are and gets them to a place where they can make a living wage. And we can't do that without the partnerships of our business and industry. Now, Chat State is very fortunate because you have a very diversified economy here, and you have some very big players that have been willing to step to the front and help. In Wichita and in my county, it's very much agriculture, light manufacturing, and aircraft. And so we don't have nearly the kinds of partnership opportunities that you've had here. That said, one of the things that we've really built out over the last couple of years, and I think we were talking about this earlier, was our corporate training. Being able to really help our businesses, particularly medium and small businesses, get the training and workforce development that they need to move forward. When I was sharing earlier that when I took over that particular area, when it moved under academics, it was about a $750,000 cost center for the college, and now is more than breaking even. And that's because we did some very strategic things. Number one, we had to think about getting rid of an old model. It's hard to walk away from the same old that you've always done, even when it stopped working. And so we walked away from that. We brought in some transition folks to help us with our processes. We joined Global Corporate College, which is a consortium of community colleges across the nation that do national and international training. So if, for example, Butler is now the TSA trainer for Homeland Security because we started that program with TSA in Wichita. They want it everywhere. Well, we can't send trainers to Cleveland and LA and everywhere else. So we partner through Global Corporate College so that other colleges can do that training, but we get a cut of that, which is very nice. We do recently have a new partnership that I'm not at liberty to put out there, but it's one of our largest employers, and it has taken us the entire 5 years I've been there to even get them to talk to us and come to the door. But because of our TACTA grant, we were able to demonstrate to them the great skill set that we could bring to them, and now they're willing to step up and bring us some internships for our students and that kind of thing. So yeah, but kudos to everyone in here that has ever worked on those partnerships that you have. They are truly remarkable, and then, yeah, totally a national model. So, yeah. Workforce, very important. Everybody's looking maybe just slightly droopy. Is it a long day?
My name is Julius Dodds. I work in academic affairs. My question has to do with diversity. So you mentioned that you had been here several years ago, and this place has really changed. Not only is this city beautiful, but the diversity is continuing to increase. Tell us a little bit about your experience in infusing diversity on campuses and where you stand on that.
So I mentioned that we have a council system within our organization, and one of those newer councils is our Inclusion Council. We very intentionally didn't name it the Diversity Council for the same reason that we don't want to have a retention office. Then diversity becomes the Diversity Council's job. And of course, diversity is everybody's job, and inclusion is everybody's job. But they were much more comfortable with the word inclusion, so that's what we went with. We are one of the first community colleges to participate in a statewide Tilford conference on diversity. The universities had had this for several years, opened the doors to community colleges, and Butler was the one that jumped first. So we're big on planning in that conference planning. We're always involved in that. But the best part about it is we're sending more and more folks to that diversity conference out of our faculty and staff who are coming back, and we're asking them to infuse what they learn into their classrooms, into their offices. And the Inclusion Council has taken on several different initiatives to try to work with folks to get those kinds of things done and hold those folks accountable. So again, it's really working at that grassroots level. And I think it's important when we talk about diversity, we talk about inclusion, that we don't just talk about the things that you can see. A lot of times we want to talk about race and ethnicity. We might talk about age. We might talk about gender. All of these are important components. But we have LGBT students that we need to have some consideration of. We have folks that need disability services. And sometimes those disabilities are not visual to us, and we can unintentionally perhaps make them feel excluded. And so trying to find ways and strategies to include folks in all of those different communities and more that I probably didn't even mention, and bring them together. If you're asking me, do I have all the answers on how to make my campus the inclusion perfection that I would like it to be? I don't, but I have an incredible team that's working on it and coming up with ways to get that done.
Any last burning questions? You to wrap up, anybody?
Does that inclusion committee also respond to the needs for diversity in faculty and staff?
So the question is, does the Inclusion Committee respond to the need for diversity in faculty and staff? And the answer is it's one of the things that they're looking at, for sure. When you live in South Central Kansas, it is not an easy place to recruit diverse faculty and staff. We, as I mentioned, through our sports and now increasingly through our arts programs, we can bring in more and more diverse students, which makes for a wonderful environment on campus. But yeah, recruiting has been a challenge for us. It's something that we recognize we need to do more of.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. You've been tremendous. I appreciate it.
Okay, so I want everybody to remember that there is a feedback form online. So if you will please go to the Chattanooga State website and select the presidential search bar. it will take you directly to the TBR page where all of the candidates are there. These videos will be archived so you can view them over and over. And and really, the chancellor has told us that he will read every one of those feedback forms. So we're going to hold him to that. Please make your voices known and give your comments and feedback on each candidate. So thanks for coming, and there will be a reception over at the CBIH building in about 15 minutes, so you're all welcome to come.